on behalf of Shared Services Forum. As you would know, Shared Services Forum is already into 10th year of its existence and operation. And my name is Anand Maheshwari. I'm also a National Council member of SSF and also have the privilege of moderating the first session. This is, as you all would know, this is the third Finance Leadership E-Summit being held by SSF. We started off doing these function-specific summits a couple of years ago. So we have had 2 finance summits already, leadership summits, and this time it had to become an E-Summit. So the theme, as you know, of this summit is the reset the finance transformation, short-term impact and long-term business goals. That is the overall summit theme of the summit, which is spread over 2 days, that is today and tomorrow, across 4 sessions of about an hour each. And ours, we are starting off with the first one, of which the specific theme is navigating through the pandemic, the fine balance between short-term cost takeouts and long-term transformation goals. And as you can see, the theme has been very pertinent, and the theme itself would throw up many questions or ponderables, if I can say, like cost takeout or cost deferment. What is short-term and what is long-term in the current context? Especially when the purse strings are getting ever so tighter, the CFOs are not opening their wallets, then where is the talk of this transformation, which may require some investments? What is the definition of payback in the current context? We all hear mantras like cash conservation. Are we also looking at cash generation through the sell out or partial sell out of assets in a particular context? What about the unlocking the value which has been created? Is it coming handy for a rainy day in some cases? What is the kind of impact everybody is seeing? Is it as bad in every case as it made out to be? Or are there cases where people are also looking at opportunities? So there are multiple such questions which may be in any finance professional's mind. And to deal with those type of questions and get further insight, we have a fabulous panel present today virtually. And I am absolutely delighted that the panel, which is rich in experience, which has seen multiple facets of journeys of transformation as GBS heads or otherwise, carrying amongst all of us nearly 200 years of experience. So next 50-55 minutes are hopefully going to be very rich and rewarding for all of us. The format that we are supposed to follow today is, fortunately, no PowerPoint presentations, just round robin of conversation, and it will be my job to make sure that the audience gets best out of the in the limited time from this hugely talented and endowed panel that we have got here. So I'm sure you would have seen their introductions, which will again come up. But just to remind, few rules of the game. And in this virtual summit, all participants have been kept on mute. You can read through. But yes, we will make it interactive. You can raise questions to the panelists, specifically by naming anyone or to anyone. And as a moderator, I'll take up the questions as and when the time for that permits. Quick introduction. We have Rajesh Gajri, MD BlackRock, Guy Mercier, MD Europcar Mobility, all the way from south of France. Sanjay Khanna, VP and Head Financial Operations of a large Fortune 500 company. That's how he likes to describe himself. Sandeep Arora, CEO, Lafarge Holcim Global Business Hub. Milan Sheth, EVP EMEA region from Automation Anywhere, but better known to the fraternity for his long innings with EY. And myself, Anand Maheshwari from Quintus Global and Shared Services Forum. So without further ado, we move on to our conversation, and I would turn first to you, Rajesh Gajri. Rajesh, as I understand, thriving on crisis has been a specialty for BlackRock. So how do you see this entire situation emerging from your perspective? What are your short-term immediate cost takeout challenges, if any, and how you are responding to that? But at the same time, you are keeping your eyes absolutely fixated on the long-term goals, business goals as well. So few minutes to you, Rajesh. You can take 3 to 4 minutes, please.
Sure, thanks, Anand. And yes, as you mentioned, BlackRock has sort of thrived in crises or off the back of those, and the global financial crisis is a good example where BlackRock became sort of stronger. One, because we were in a position where people wanted our help to manage coming out of the crisis, as well as help them manage their finances and their money. And second, we had an advisory business come out of that. I think as we look at this, 2 points I'd like to make to start. One is actually referencing something our CEO talked about, and has been talking about for a couple of years, as sort of the largest asset manager in the world with over $7 trillion of managing money on behalf of our clients. He continues to talk about taking a long-term view. And when he talks about that, he talks to CEOs about being fixated with short-term and quarterly profits and results, and how in today's times, when we talk about moving from shareholder capitalism to stakeholder capitalism, because you need to look at the organization's impact, not just to shareholders, but to society you are in, to your employees, and sort of the communities you work in. And he continues to emphasize that it has to be about long-term, keeping your strategy in mind and taking a longer-term view and not being sort of fixated with short-term, which I think in the current crisis is ever more important. And BlackRock's firm view is we will emerge as a society and as humanity out of this, and we will emerge stronger. Obviously, in many ways, we will adapt to the new ways of working. And therefore, it is much more important now to remain fixated on the long term and not sort of look at short-term, objectives of should we take out cost and should we reduce heads, etc. Because I think our belief is we will emerge stronger. And the last thing we want to do is rush into taking decisions where we don't know where the future of this pandemic is, what is the long-term revenue implications. So we're actually staying committed to our current expense base, and we actually made a public statement. We will not reduce a single head as a fallout of COVID, and we made that over the last couple of quarters. But that doesn't mean that we won't rationalize or reprioritize us towards our objectives, but a long-term view is definitely being taken, because we know that as we emerge, the biggest constituency or asset we have, which we need behind us, is our employees. And therefore, we're staying invested in keeping that sort of constituency engaged and sort of obviously looking after their health and safety, because that's what's going to take us through to the future. So clearly, I think our sort of priority is not about finding ways to reduce headcount or rationalize expense. I mean, like most financial organizations, 50% of our cost base is variable. It is employee cost. We will sort of manage that efficiently, not by reducing, but by not hiring anymore. So we have deferred hiring, but there is more, and I can talk about how we're looking to reutilize and efficiently allocate that resource pool. But by no stretch are we talking about any form of reduction in the employee base.
That sounds wonderful, Rajesh. Thanks for making that statement once again. I would pick you up again on how are you still addressing the challenges of the here and now in terms of optimizing the resource base that you have got, And certainly, there is no denying the fact that in most situations, the business volumes are dwindling, and its impact on global business services is also being felt by varying degree by variety of organizations. So I would come back to you certainly, but I would now like to move from India to say Europe and turn to you, Guy. Once again, a very warm welcome and good morning to you. What would you say about the navigating part of this post-pandemic response? I mean, we all know that the immediate response, the industry has been quite exemplary, but a lot has been heard and said about that. So how are you now moving towards the next step? How in particular Europcar, which is in a business where volumes would have dwindled substantially, business volumes, and how are you taking care of your people, your processes, and keeping a futuristic view in mind? So what would you be doing now, Guy, from your perspective? Over to you.
So thank you, Anand. Thank you for the invitation. I'm very honored to be there and to share experience globally, because one of the unique elements in this COVID-19 crisis, it's not only the fact that it hurts fundamentally and profoundly many peoples in the world, but it was almost at the same time. So it's really a global crisis. Therefore, sharing experience globally between what's happening in Europe and what's happening in Asia, it's of a high value for me, because there is no cultural background or whatsoever. We are all going from a survival mode individually, protecting the employee, putting them remote, working from home immediately, protecting our business model, and trying to protect the economy in order to survive the next coming weeks or months. Let me just give you a little bit of the background, because I joined Europcar in January as a managing director for the shared service. Let's say to go in a classic process of process transformation. The idea, they were too much country specific and they wanted to go to process standardization. You know, all these global process ownership, standard versus specific, value versus cost, traditional one. So I say, okay, this was my zone of comfort. And then March, boom, COVID arrived. Everybody believed it was just a flu, another one. And suddenly we realized that it was really serious. And here I had to manage a real crisis like we all did. But let me give you the context quickly of what happened in the business I was part of. Europcar, in March, they were shutting down all the airport, which means from 100% good year, 2019, from a preparation of the high season coming, which is Easter, suddenly all the airports shut down. 260,000 cars being stuck on the parking spot, no customer. We had a drop of a revenue of 92% in March. We had a drop of revenue of 95% in April. And we just came back in May and June with a drop of 60%. So this is so major that when we talk about crisis, when you talk about the CFO being a little bit reluctant to go on the pocket money, in this case, they had almost no more money in the pocket. And we had to call for emergency credit loan from the French government. In that context, I suddenly realized that there is a total new game for shared service. This is the time where the shared service has to go frontline, from transactional background for value added, from KPI, from SLA, from all those traditional elements we used to talk in the industry. It was the time to jump frontline and help the business. We were focusing on cash collection. We were using the centralized AP to really contain the spending. We were helping the treasurer only to spend a million a day, if you have only a million a day or 10 million a day, whom you will pay. And that's where we use artificial intelligence to build algorithms to pay a little bit of the old invoice versus the new one. So first of all, my first remark between the short term and the long term. I want during the panel discussion, and I don't want to take too much time as an introduction, really that you realize that my short term today is 6 weeks and my long term today, it's 6 months. That today, from the process standardization, from all the classic, how we will survive after that, it's more than a transformation. It's a total new game where the first things, you protect your people and you work very close with your customer, which are the business unit. More you will help them today by making impossible things possible, greater will be your credit after that. And the post-COVID for me, it's nothing else than the fundamental change to come back to our core value. The core value of the shared service industry, it's eat the fixed cost. Do not reduce them, make them disappearing. You eat them, you make them disappearing. That means you stop the process or you make them variabilize. And the new challenge for me, it's in the flex down, I had to reduce by 35% my cost within 3 months. 35 within 3 months. It's not 10% every year with continuous improvement. And today we have to go flex down, but very interesting in the model, I'm selling the model for the flex up because the agility in flexing up the resource will be of a unique advantage of the shared service industry. Thank you, Anand. I was just wanted to frame my support and my input for the panel and for the audience.
Fantastic opening comments by you, Guy, and you know, this short-term 6 weeks and long-term 6 months tells us a lot. And your mantra of eating the fixed cost is another telling comment in the current environment. So when somebody is speaking from France, how can we leave out Lafarge? So I turn to you, Sandeep, although you are heading a complete global operations on behalf of Lafarge Holcim Group. But picking up from where we left, I would like to understand from you, what have been your key mantras to address this entire fine balance requirement of how to, if I can use the word survive, versus how to continue to remain focused on the transformational journey. So, Sandeep.
Sure. Thank you, Anand. So I think the one unique part for us from a global service center perspective is that the global center for Lafarge Holcim is a brand new one. We started the journey a year back. So when we came across to the COVID situation 4 months back, 4 to 5 months back, we're in a very different ball game than a very large, BAU setup. So we were stable in some areas which got recently transitioned. And currently, as we speak, or 4 or 5 months, we're in a significant growth mode to say. So we were in the process of, and we are in process of doing significant transitions and transformation for our various partners across the globe. So of course, initial survival part for the first, I will say 3-4 weeks was just to make sure that the core quality of service remains well intact. But after first 30 days are over, now the expectation across the globe from our stakeholder is, I will say, much higher than what it would have been, say, without COVID. Now we are looking at a journey of transformation, the transformation journey to be further accelerated and at a much more, lower investment part of it. So that I think is a major shift for us. In the last 4 months, we have done significant hiring. Everything is being done, managed virtually. Virtual, of course, interview virtual is still known. Virtual onboarding, virtual training, every process going live to remote training, a remote transition, and report go live. And also, so that has been a significant shift for us, for which, of course, 4 or 5 months back, we were not prepared for it. but collectively, we took day by day and things steered up pretty well. So for us, I will say it has been, from a global service center perspective, it has been a little less to cut the cost, but more to make sure that the transformation journey get accelerated while at a much more optimized cost. And some of the areas which we are also accelerated is an area which, I'm sure Miran will touch upon a lot, advancing our automation and RPA and, AI journey, which we were planning to little bit, maybe take a couple of quarters later. It has been further accelerated, and only we already had a fairly good automation, in our other service center, and the global service center has set up their automation and RPA COE during the COVID. Which is of course part of so-called long-term strategy for us. I will say long-term for us will be at least 12 to 18 months, not 6 months. But there is a very ambitious plan which we are running, from a long-term perspective as well.
Sandeep, you made some very, very profound statement about, in your case, there was no letup. You quickly assessed and responded to the situation and went in a virtual mode for all your ongoing accelerated plans for building up the center. And that sounds like music to our ears. But that must have been one of the hell of a lot to do, and a little bit against the tide kind of response. But the fact remains that as you have proven, that everything was possible to do in a virtual mode. It is just it just required probably learning, relearning certain rules of the game, redefining certain basics, and make sure that ongoing transition, etc., continue to happen. So from hearing from the head of a relatively young GBS center in India, that comes like so refreshing. So from a very young center, can I now try and move to one of the oldest GIC in India? Sanjay, you are in a very special position. You have been heading a mature operation, which has reinvented itself multiple times. I'm personally aware of that. And for you, the business being very, very sort of directly vulnerable to this kind of crisis, the frontline business, because it is mostly to do with what we know as a discretionary spend. And you are in a B2C kind of a business model. How did it work for you from both from the finance, core finance that you are heading as an operations at a global scale versus from the business perspective? So some such thoughts, and we are obviously waiting to hear a lot from Milan, and I'll come back to you, Milan, next. But Sanjay, a few quick minutes from you. Please unmute Sanjay.
Anand, can you hear me?
Yes, now, perfect. Thank you.
Okay. First of all, thank you very much for inviting me and giving me this opportunity. I really, really appreciate, and I think hearing from my fellow colleagues, it's been wonderful. What I can tell you, I think from our company perspective, I'll first talk about business because that's the bread and butter for all of us. For the last couple of years, Anand, as you are aware, that we know that every 10-year, recession comes, and therefore our company started planning about recession for the last 2 years. What we did last year was we created a playbook that in case we face a situation where the business is going to go down, and obviously we never expected that the business will go down so much given this COVID situation. But the beauty here was that we were able to create a playbook for winning through the crisis. And we had already identified initiatives that we would undertake should we face such a scenario. So as soon as in the month of March, as we faced this situation, we had a ready-made playbook available where we said, what are the actions that needs to be taken? So from a business standpoint, let me just tell you what few actions that we took. We immediately decided that we will cut down on the consulting cost, we will cut down on the contracting cost, and most importantly, we decided that 40% of our marketing budget we will cut down, which was essentially on acquiring new card members. Now 40%, obviously I can't quote numbers, is a significant amount that we said, let's just focus on existing card members, because if we look for new card members, we don't know about their credit worthiness. So we decided that we will hold that money. Now with this money that we had, which is 40% of marketing budget, consulting cost saves, and also the temporary labor cost saves, what we decided is, we said, let's now do something different so that our business can continue. So we identified an initiative called a value injection, whereby we gave, let's say today you are getting 1x membership reward if you are spending money. We decided to give you 5x of membership reward on what you spend the money, and even if you burn the membership reward. So as a result, the card benefit suddenly went up, and we saw that our business was not as bad as it could be. So that was one big, from a cost perspective. Obviously, hiring freeze, obviously all those things were done by us also, as my fellow colleagues said. Another thing which probably we also did was that from a call center perspective, since the number of calls started coming down, what we did is that we diverted that staff to collections. So whatever money we had stuck in the AR, we said that let's divert these people to collect the money. And similarly, from a merchant side also, we saw that we had a lot of recoverable money. So we kind of went after that and recovered that money. Last but not the least, from the business perspective, what we also did, we went to all our vendors. We have, huge amount of, I would say, billions of dollars spent that we have with our vendors. And we asked everybody that give us a 5% cut for at least 1 year, so that at least, we can survive through this crisis. And we got at least from 80% plus of our vendors, we got a 5% cut of the cost that they were charging us. So these are certain initiatives that we took from a business standpoint. And the good news is that we are in the month of June, we did better than May. In the month of May, we did better in April. So we are continuing to do that. Last point on the business side is that what was important is that we said that no forecast will work, because this is a crisis which is worse than what we saw in 9/11 and worse than what we saw in 2008 financial crisis. This is like a 5x of both the crises put together. So what we started doing is we started creating not a forecast for next 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, 12 months, but started creating scenario planning. Scenario where our business will be worse, very worse, and very, very worse. We never thought about an optimistic situation at all. Now, that's how we are tracking. And the good news is we are obviously doing better than what we are creating as a scenario planning. Finance side obviously was a big challenge, because working from home, doing a quarter close for a global company had never happened in the past. So that was like the biggest worry our CFO had, that would we be able to close the books of accounts or not? And the good news is that we did it very well. And some of the things that we did using artificial intelligence and robotics is we started kind of advancing our accounting, automating our accounting, so that the dependence on human is also reduced. And this was also done in a very, very fast manner. So that's how we handled the situation.
Good, Sanjay. Great to hear some of your comments, and I'll have to come back to you because you mentioned about cutting down on marketing expenses and how do you look at it from a longer term perspective and all that. But you also made some interesting point of a different kind of crowdfunding by going to all the vendors and asking for 5% back. Okay, and 80% plus responded. So that's interesting. And this forecast to scenario planning and greater uses of automation and artificial intelligence. So it's a very good moment for me to turn to Milan. Milan is, as you would all know, has done it, seen it from all angles. He has been on different sides of the table. He is currently in his current avatar. He is doing automation. process automation and technology bringing to the forefront, but he has seen the life from various angles as part of his illustrious career. So he can really provide us a 360 degrees views. So Milan, if I were to ask you, how do you see this entire, if there at all there is a dilemma of short-term versus long-term, because the boundary between these two terms is getting blurred by the passing of a day. So if at all there is a dilemma, how do you think one should address it? And what are your observations as well as some words of advice?
So thanks Anand for having me, and very interesting to hear a very diverse set of views in this conversation. It's very interesting, but if I really look back at last 6-8 months, particularly, kind of two things stands out for me, having been in the finance domain for the last 20 odd years. One is the efficiency and effectiveness, which was the mantra all along for finance professionals. And in efficiency mantra, the lever which we always had was a Six Sigma, and we have Sanjay and we have Sandeep, who's been a past masters of using Six Sigma lean in their operations. And from there to this new lever of automation, I think, which has really come in a big way, creating what we call as a digital workers, creating digital workers to handle variable. I think Guy talked about the variable cost and variable part of the infrastructure and so on. So I think that's one aspect which has happened. The second is a very strong shift in skills. This is a little bit of a less talked topic, but what we have been seeing is that the finance professionals are no longer required to be only knowing the analysis and the decision making and the judgment skills, but there is this very strong logic-led technology development skills, and which we definitely see. In fact, one of the data I can quote is that we have roughly 2 million bots deployed in the world, and almost 45% of them are in finance. And the reason for that is because finance by design is very organized, processes are well defined, controls points are very critical, and hence typically that's where the organizations begin. I wanted to make 2 points based on the learnings in last the events which have happened outside us. Number one is the whole notion of finance controlling cost of delivering finance itself and making it variable. I think Guy talked about moving out 35% of the cost, and I think everybody is, irrespective of touching the employees, but you still want to maintain your variable cost, and even your fixed cost, you want a lower, lower cost than what you're already incurred. And that's where, in our view, technology, and particularly 2 technologies. One is automation. Obviously, I have a bit of vested interest because we represent that globally as leaders. But the second is cloud. And my second point, I want to talk on cloud. When I engage with finance professionals across, I think a lot of these decisions of variabilization is left to technology. And personally, I feel that how does finance professional deploy cloud in their operations, bringing variabilization of not just infrastructure, but even people. You could deploy a whole lot of technology components per se, and again, I don't represent any cloud company, so I'm using my past experience in saying that combination of some of these technologies on cloud kind of brings down a significant amount of cost structures you would have. And then the last point, Anand, is when we talk about crisis like this, and everybody touched on it, is that short-term versus long-term. I think it's a reset time. The way we did work, we never imagined that the WFH or work from home would happen. I would like to quote what I heard from the CEO of TCS a month back in the analyst meet, and I thought that was a very nice summary. The percentage might vary. He said that the workforce of the future will be, X percentage, let's say 20% work from home, 50% in situ or in location, and 30% will be digital workers. I think this pandemic has set that new norm. Now, this percentage will vary from industry to industry, country to country, but the fact that your workforce, which was always in situ, now will be work from home, in situ, and then you have automation or digital workers coming in, has clearly been established as a new normal. I'm using a cliche here, but it's a new normal kind of coming into place. So yeah, those are some quick reactions, Anand, based on what I heard from other colleagues on this conversation.
That's great. It's wonderful to hear that. I think there is also a time for an online poll. We have got some question for the audience. We can't vote. What, in your opinion, is the most critical parameter to decide between short-term and longer-term transformation? So fast fingers. We'll get the result pretty soon. Okay. I hope our smart audience would have responded by now. Fair enough. So let's move on. We'll get the poll result shortly. So everyone has made a special mention of this entire rebooting of the strategy around workforce management. How do we look at our people? This, in fact, if you look at it from a GBS prism, as has already been pointed out, 50% or more is the cost base is of the people, our resources. They are the most critical element of our GBS businesses. And how do we look at that aspect to drive through this both short-term as well as long-term view into optimization of those resources? And here we have heard some very interesting statistics just now that the future will be, the workforce of the future will be both virtual, digital, as well as in situ. That is the way currently we have been used to working from a physical office or premises. Guy, what is your take on all this? How do you look at this entire workforce management in this post-COVID era, both as a short-term solution, but also what is going to stay here for a longer term?
In fact, what the COVID-19 brought, it was a first necessity of flexibility. And this flexibility, you know, we were just going in our industry shared service in Europe, even in Portugal, the same as you in India for a long time. One of the major issues was attrition. And attrition was considered as a major weakness and almost as a critical point to look at. And we all spend a lot of effort to try to retain the talent. The next war will be on talent, etc., etc. And suddenly in front of a crisis, you say, thanks God I have attrition because I need to reduce by 35% in the next 6 weeks. So I have this flexibility. So the first element on people, I do believe that by essence, our shared service model was a little bit unstable, but not on a very well organized way, because we tried to hire new people with no experience to replace senior people somewhere with a lot of experience. And we're trying to make believe in between that those new people, because of their talent, will be capable to replace at least 80 or 85% of what the other one were doing. I do believe this is the time now to say, no, we are a total new model. That means the existing one, which was in our back, we have just now to admit that flexibility, it's a need for everybody. And we need to play flexibility on people. Flex down was an effort I was asking to the people, because I said to all the managers, we have only 50% of cash. What do you want to do? You want just to keep 50% of your people, or you want to pay 50% of salary to 100% of people? The question is as simple to be asked, not to be answered. So this flexibility going down is one thing we have to prepare ourselves, because since Sanjay said, every 10 years we have a crisis, maybe the cycle will accelerate like everything else in life, and maybe a crisis, I hope not that major, will happen every other year. So first element on people, when you hire them, transform this uncertainty in an added value. Even if you have to say, guys, your career in my shared service center, maybe it will be only 2 years, but you know what? Let's get the best out of it for you and for me. So on the people side, I asked their effort to go and flex down. And we partially pay people. We got subsidies for the government, but they were fabulous in doing the flex down. In going the flex up, I'm starting to tell, no, the new hiring strategy will be to hire people for 6 months. You want a job for 6 months? Great, this is the place. But you will need to perform and to demonstrate that in 6 months, you are a key talent we want to keep. And no more playing, you know, this hidden probation period where we have this flexibility of keeping them, not keeping them. So my answer on people, we will need new talent. So if you have to reduce your people by 10, it's better to reduce by 20 and at the same time to add 10% new talent. And the new talent are not necessarily the new millennials. Those new talent could be the crowdfunding, the crowd hiring on internet, to have a specialist for 6 months, to have a specialist only for 4 days for the closing. Let's push the envelope of our model. Let's go back to the fundamental and let's offer flexibility to the people as an added value and not as a weakness. You work from home, we will have between 30% and 50% of people working from home. And I want the salary to be higher working from home than in the office. But based on multiplier, quantity multiplied by quality, you do the job, you perform great, you got the money and the premium. So flexibility as a competitive advantage for the people, for the company, and for the business. And then you're on mute.
Thanks for pointing it out.
My help for you.
Okay. So I had to interject, Guy, because I was tempted to ask you this. You earlier talked about bringing variability in your cost structure. So are you also saying that bringing variability, one of the methods will be this new type of hiring plan or strategy that you are now implementing?
Absolutely, absolutely. And declare to the people. That means variability means not lower. Variability, it's a higher price, yes, but only for what you need. That means today we were struggling in this industry by lower cost. We were the victim of an inefficient continuous improvement program. And even on automation, we were submitting every project to very short-term business case. Return on investment, we asked for $30,000 to have a return on investment. Wrong. When you go for automation, I love your 20%, Milan, means you have to design and embed it that. Variable cost means whenever you will need business, for the time you will need, this is the price you will pay almost at the unit. And I will absorb the difference in my model because I know how to play attrition. I will start to train people on multiple process. because they hate to do payables all the time. They hate to do record to report all the time. That means, you know, guys, you are on board, you are part of a task force. You have a brain, you learn payables, collection, you learn customer relationship, you learn KPI, you learn algorithm. More you learn, better you will be. And the next months will be maybe another job for you. This is a little bit of the limits. But what I want to say, Anand, flexibility today, it's the greatest opportunity. But the condition to participate to that game, it's speed. And I'm afraid that's what we are missing the most, is the speed.
So
the speed of reaction.
So I would like to pick up from there and ask you, Sandeep, you are still have been and continue to remain in the hiring mode. In the new era or the changing environment, what are the key skills which are different from the older times that you are looking at while you are hiring, especially when you are doing everything virtual?
I will say some of the key different skill, I will say that one of the key one is the collaboration dimension. That's one important skill because you are not sitting next to each other and you are sitting at a distance. So that becomes a quite unique skill. And the second is how much the tech savvy the person is. Because as Miran also rightly mentioned, you're moving towards the digital workforce. You're looking at virtual workforce, digital workforce, and the remaining segment as the existing one. So you need more and more people which are more tech savvy, which can help you to digitize the things faster. You need the people who can learn faster, because one of the key challenges we faced for 3-4 months with the entire transformation is training people virtually, remotely.
Okay.
And the virtual model has not been, it has been there for quite some time, but maybe less dominant. So people who are willing to learn fast. So we picked up, so learning ability was one key element for us. Collaboration was the second one, and the digital tech savviness was the third one from the operational dimension perspective.
Okay, thank you. In the interest of time, I'll have to move a little faster, and I believe we already have some questions from the audience. Can we have them on the screen, please? Any questions specifically addressed to any panelist? Can I see those questions, please? Oh, okay. I can see some questions. Let me see if I can. Yeah.
I can see the question from Rahul, which is basically in line with what Guy mentioned. Is the hiring for the short term is going to be the new norm, or the people will not be becoming part of the long term journey? So my view would be that hiring for the short term is definitely going to significantly go up. Doesn't mean that the long term hiring will not be there, but the short term hiring, the demand is going to be much higher, and it is going to be across level, not only at the operational level, even at a very, very senior leadership level. The days of having a permanent long-term job is, gradually reducing significantly. And with this current situation, the speed is going to go up. But yes, there will be still a lot of roles and a lot of organization which will look at people to continue for long-term journey as well.
Anand, there's a question probably addressed to me. If you're okay, I'll answer. Try and address that, and others can join in. What kind of finance processes are getting automated? So essentially, procure to pay is the easiest, and pretty much you have Sanjay and Rajesh and everybody will kind of address that. Those are the easiest ones. But typically, we have seen two areas where there is unstructured or semi-structured data coming in form of documents coming in. I think that's really getting automated heavily, whether it's in financial planning analysis, whether it's in order to cash as a cycle, or a record to report cycle. So I think those are the fastest kind of sub-segments within that. The other aspect of finance is the finance operations per se. So those are the kind of broad processes. And as I said, 45% of our global bots are in finance area. So all industries, we see that. There's also a question, probably I think I can try and take my shot, is the business lagging behind finance when it comes to use of automation? So actually, the business does lag behind finance, and that's where finance always becomes the first area where automation or any new technology gets applied. I think the challenge, though, is that the finance to define the benefits in form of quality or other benefits, or I think that's very critical. So we find that more successful organizations have been able to communicate that benefit very well to business, and then business takes on finance, which in turn helps finance to drive costs down in the business. So that's just quick to response, Anand, from my side on.
Sure. Thank you. Sanjay, I could see a couple of questions specifically for you. Would you like to take those now? Unmute, please. You can't hear us? So you're on mute. Sanjay.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Anand, can you repeat the question? I can't see the question actually.
Oh, you can't see. Okay, maybe that's the way it has been set up. So I won't take all the questions, but the one which has been interesting question for you, Sanjay, is what kind of AI did you try for your book closure?
Yeah. Okay. Can you hear me, Anand?
Yes, we can. This
Yeah.
is the question.
So,
what kind of AI was implemented in book closure activity?
Yeah, definitely. I think the one area where we looked at machine learning was around balance sheet reconciliation and manual accounting. So let me just first talk about manual accounting. In manual accounting, we were almost 60% automated, and we have now reached almost 97% automated for the company. Obviously, some accounting will always remain manual, and that's where we leveraged robotics. That's where we leveraged ERP platform. That's where we leveraged machine learning. In the space of balance sheet reconciliation, where you ingest, let's say, 100 items, and the auto match rate, which means the first time right, was only 50% a few years ago. We have now improved it to 90%. And here we have actually implemented machine learning, which is RStudio open source, where we have basically created the algorithms to match the open items so that the references are identified through a algorithm way, and it is auto match. So we were 60% first time right, we are 96% auto first time right. So that's the way we have kind of addressed from a record to report cycle some of these things. The other item that I would probably say where we have used natural language generation is basically looking at comparing the forecast versus actual and creating a commentary. Earlier, it was a manual process where financial analyst used to pick up the forecast numbers, pick up the actual numbers. Let's say $100 forecast, $90 is actual, and then he used to write $10 is the variance or 10% is the variance, and then used to put a business logic behind this. What we have done is we have mechanized the basic process whereby the natural language generation pick up the values and convert that into a text. And so I already have the information that there is a 10% variance. All I need to do now is basically apply the business logic to see what is this variance for. So these are some of the processes.
Sanjay, thank you. So some of the, you can also choose to type the answers later on, and those will be on record for audience benefit. So we are left out just about 5 more minutes for this session. Time really flies, and so before turning to anyone, Rajesh, I wanted to hear from you. You touched upon briefly about this entire resource optimization as one of the immediate strategy in the short term. How have you gone about that while remaining bullish about the long term?
Yes, I think, as I mentioned, we haven't been hiring, but we have clearly reprioritized. And I think one of the things we've tried to, 2 things actually. One was what we've called flexible resourcing. And I guess the simplest example to use is our T&E, our global T&E processing team, which processes T&E claims. Now in Q2, we had a lower T&E spend of 90%. So obviously there was very few claims for that small T&E team to process. Therefore, we had capacity created in that group. And going back to the point about flexibility and agility, there was an opportunity to say, how can we redeploy these people to other initiatives which are more strategic in nature? Now that seems like a very simple, obvious thing, but it's a bit of an art versus a science, because these are T&E resources and they may not have the skills, but we have to challenge ourselves to say, how can we redeploy them? Obviously, maybe in accounts payable, but maybe in book close, or maybe in other areas where we can redeploy this. So being more flexible and dynamic. And I think we've tried to do this beyond boundaries, because the pandemic has proved you can work virtually anywhere. So you could be in India and you could be doing a flexible role for supporting someone in the UK, for example. So we've tried to put a bit of method into that. And the second is to put some investment behind, and it links to Milan's point, is a bit around citizen development. So how do we now create finance people who actually learn Blue Prism, for example, or learn Python, and then actually apply those skills? Because I think one of the interesting things the pandemic has shown is, as people are working from home and having to manage with some of the latency issues or some of the sort of efficiency issues of working remotely, they actually are more thinking about, how do I make this smarter, or how can I automate this? These are tactical things. But enabling them by giving them the citizen development sort of training, and then actually encouraging them to use that within sort of a governance and a framework, is the other thing where we are actually reskilling and challenging people to do things differently, which is again helping develop the skill set, but sort of delivering us value.
Thank you. So let's see the results of that online poll that we had a little while ago. Okay. So most people say significant business impact will be the most important parameter to decide transformational investments. Speed of return, obviously, is the next. Okay, cash conservation, functional process improvement doesn't take too many takers, it seems. So that's fine. Close. Okay, so before we close the session, one rapid fire question for all of you about how this whole thing of short-term as well as long-term goals and everything, how has your been alignment with your parent, the headquarters, because most of you come from the GBS side, so I mean other than Milan in the current role. So you can go very quickly. Rajesh, starting with you again.
Alignment has been very high. I mean, the long-term focus remains across the organization and applies to us as much as it does globally. Okay, so let me close this. How about you, Sanjay?
I think what we are completely aligned. We have one leadership behavior which is called enterprise view. So colleague first was the most important priority to make sure that our colleagues are safe and secured, and then delivering value to the customer is the second. And globally across all locations, these two goals completely aligned with everyone across the hierarchy.
Great. Sandeep, 10 seconds, please.
Yeah, so I think for us, the three key goals are health, cost, and cash. So there's I would say, strong alignment. In fact, our journey is further accelerated for the next 12 months as well. Yeah.
Okay. And Guy, what would you say from your perspective?
It's a perfect alignment because there is only one battle today. It's Q3, and that's the word for everybody. I don't want to say long-term after. No, long-term, it's an everyday vision. It's a way to guide your road. But everybody in Europcar, in every station, in every position in the shared service, there is only one word, is win the battle of Q3.
Perfect. And you will have the last word, Milan. Please, what would you say?
I think my only comment is, if not now, when? If there's ever an opportunity for transforming, it is now. So if not now, when would you? What else can trigger you? This is the opportunity.
Very well said. So we are at the end of our time. Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you very, very much. It has been a very enriching and very, very hugely rewarding experience to talk amongst friends and fellow professionals and practitioners. That Shared Services Forum is all about, to bring them all together. So once again, my personal gratitude and thanks for joining us. Have a great day. And
thank you very much.
Thank you, Anand. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
I also take pleasure, and I can see the names of the next panelist, and Tanmay, over to you to take from here. Tanmay Agarwal. Thank you.